Episode 21. Who's the chairman? Once the couple and the receptionist overcame their initial shock, their expressions became very ugly. The man in shades even trembled slightly. His father's wealth was nothing compared to the Carrington Group's. Keith took a look at everyone's expressions and said indifferently, Miss Carrington, I heard that you're the boss here. You don't follow the rules when doing things? As he spoke, he looked at the receptionist. His meaning was obvious. Gwen was very nervous at this moment. Although she knew that Keith wouldn't do anything to her, she was very afraid. She took a deep breath and calmed her emotions down. Then she looked at the receptionist and said, You're fired. The receptionist's face turned pale. She almost cried. She suddenly grabbed Keith's sleeve and said, Sir, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I need this job. Please forgive me. Are you free tonight? I'll treat you to dinner as an apology. Keith frowned. He saw that the receptionist was about to cry. She even hinted that she would compensate him with her body. It seemed that this job was really important to her. Keith sighed and said, You don't have to treat me to dinner. You're not my employee. I don't have the right to decide whether or not to fire you. As he spoke, he looked at Gwen and said, Does your company not have rules and regulations? Mrs. Carrington, aren't you being a little too hasty? As Gwen calmed down, she began to understand that it must have been her employees and the rich young couple who'd caused the problem. Even her husband was afraid of Keith, and Gwen was deeply worried that Keith wouldn't be happy. She hurriedly nodded and said, You're right. I'll look into the matter and make sure it's taken care of properly. The onlookers were stunned when they heard this. Gwen was treating Keith like he was the president of her company. The receptionist was relieved and looked at Keith gratefully. You fulfilled the receptionist's wish of not being fired. Wish value, +1. Current progress, 11 of 10. With the matter settled, all that was left was to deal with the guy in shades. Keith looked at him indifferently and didn't say a word. Immediately, all eyes in the room gathered on the rich young couple. The man clenched his teeth slightly and his expression was incomparably ugly. He looked at Gwen, then at his girlfriend beside him. Finally, he saw Keith's gaze and knew that he had no choice but to apologize immediately. If Gwen decided to take this out on his family's business, his father would be bankrupt in no time. The man in shades made up his mind. He prepared to kneel down to kiss Keith's shoes, but a hand stopped him. Keith stood the man back up, took off his sunglasses, and said lightly, Just forget about it. Keep your pride. Keith pushed him aside and said with a cold voice, Take your girlfriend and get lost. Don't let me see you again. When the man in shades heard this, he apologized and escaped. You fulfilled the man's wish of not kissing your shoes. Wish value, +1. Progress, 12 of 10. Gwen looked at Keith's calm expression and felt a trace of curiosity in her heart. Keith had spoken up on behalf of the receptionist and stopped the guy in shades from humiliating himself in front of everyone. It gave her a new understanding of him. She remembered how, at the critical moment last night, Keith had also stopped her husband from breaking her son's fingers. This was another side to the young man by whom she was so intimidated. Keith wasn't cruel. Instead, he showed mercy. maybe he wasn't that scary after all. When Gwen realized this, she didn't feel as frightened anymore. Instead, she found herself wanting to know more about this enigmatic young man. But right now, Keith wasn't interested in Gwen's thoughts. He said to the receptionist, who was still in a daze, "Why are you standing there? Hurry up and get the ball rolling. I want to rent the apartment." "Ah, okay, right away, sir." The receptionist trembled. Of course, she didn't dare mention the matter of the $72,000 and quickly completed the necessary paperwork. "Sir, please wait a moment. There will be an agent to take you to the apartment right away." Before Keith could say anything, Gwen said, "Oh, why don't I drive you over there?" "Huh?" Keith was slightly stunned and looked at Gwen with a frown. She'd been so scared a moment ago. Why did she want to take him to the apartment now? Keith was puzzled, and even if he'd used his optimal logic, he couldn't have guessed what Gwen's intentions were. But he had a plan. After taking the key from the receptionist, he smiled faintly and said, "My legs work just fine. There's no need to trouble you." He didn't look at Gwen's expression, but walked steadily out of the realtor's office instead. Keith had 3 charm points, which meant that people would instinctively have a good impression of him. Once he smiled, no matter if it was at Gwen, the receptionist, or the other people in the office, their hearts skipped for no apparent reason. Gwen stared blankly at Keith's back. Though her heart had stopped racing, she still felt a little uncomfortable. When she offered to take Keith to see the room, she was shocked by her own words, but she still hadn't expected Keith to reject her, and he hadn't even bothered to look at her. The whole situation gave her a strange feeling in her heart. "Am I really that old?" she thought to herself. Keith looked back at the realtor's office, and a faint smile appeared on his face. He knew this agency belonged to the Carrington Group. In fact, that was why he'd come here. His purpose was clear. He wanted to let Magnus know where he lived, so that Magnus wouldn't go to his parents' house when he wanted revenge. Keith's family had always been his weakness. As soon as he was earning some decent money, he'd buy a high-end property with full security so that he could be completely at ease. Keith walked down the road and said in his head, "System, I want to make a wish. I want to have the ability to move quickly." Successful wish. Host has obtained a skill, wind walking. Description: host's movement speed will increase by 300% after activating the skill. The chance of dodging will increase by 100%. Note, the duration of this skill is based on the host's stamina. When stamina is used up, the skill will stop. Keith was delighted. He'd long wanted to have this ability. He could protect himself and escape, and if anything happened to his family, he could be there in no time. What surprised him most was that his dodging rate increased by 100%. If he wanted to succeed in the future, he knew he would have to offend others. He might even end up being shot at. The ability to dodge bullets was exactly what he wanted. He asked the system some careful questions about his new skills and discovered that the probability of successful dodging was based on dexterity.